Hey everybody, it's Randall Lobb, and this is a supplemental key issue of the Definitive Podcast. It's supplemental because we're doing an interview, but we're also doing different hand signs tonight. I am here with Isaac Elliott Fisher.
Here I am doing a hand sign.
That's a good one.
That's a good one, right?
It looks like a bird.
I was trying to do a bat, but it's obvious. I mean, there's a bat behind you. Come on.
What? There's a bat behind me. Oh, we have a special guest tonight here at the station, socially distancing. So we invited a guest in and then made him stay away from us, which that's how it is these days. Before we get into it, we'll just say sometimes we know people who are collectors of things who have all the things. Now, this collector has all the things. He has the things that you might want to have. He's from a town nearby. He is related to you, isn't he, Isaac?
I don't even ask how to describe how we're related. We'll just say we're related.
Is it really complicated?
Yeah, it actually is. I actually don't even fully understand.
It's one of those small town things where like your dad married his mom and they found out they were third cousins?
It's kind of not like that at all, but it's sort of like he's from another city, and I was like told at some point in my youth that, hey, there's this guy who works in media that is like vaguely related to you in some way. He's like your mom's third cousin twice removed. So I called him up and I was like, hey, I want to go work in this business, and then he'd let me do that.
Why don't you introduce him then, since he's somehow your cousin or not?
So my not cousin is Rob Currie, who's also kind of my cousin in some weird way. There he is. He's right there.
Hey, Isaac, my second cousin once removed. So nice to see you again.
Is that actually what we are?
That is what you are.
Oh, okay. He's cool. That's actually not that far.
I mean,
I think get married, I think.
You know what? I think your great-great-grandmother and my great-grandmother are the same person or something like that. So,
is there any chance that we should stop having a comics podcast and have a podcast to explain all these kinds of things that I also don't know about, the removed or not removed or who's been added?
There's a lot of things that we're not taught in life that I think that we could have a podcast to be like, talk about taxes. Like, how do those work?
Maybe an hour long episode, maybe.
Yeah, I do not want to talk about taxes.
How to do them? That's a good podcast. People would watch that, right?
Nope.
No.
Rob Currie, you live near us and you are remarkable for a number of things. One is your family, I guess. But another is you are the local Batmaniac. Is that fair to say?
I think one of my favorite stories is my enabler, the guy who runs the comic book store where I buy the current issues of Batman, introduced me to his father and said, this is Rob Currie. He's the by far the biggest Batman collector in the entire region. And then he said, and he's married. And then the father went from like, oh. So yes, I am special for a couple of reasons.
He has 2 kids too.
Hey, don't feed into that stereotype.
Done it twice. Anyway.
Don't feed into the stereotype. But you're not just a Batman collector. You're also in the media and you're into motorcycles. So like, please give us a little bit of your roundedness first before we dive into the one thing.
Gotcha. Wow. So I've been a corporate video producer for over 30 years. And I've shot 5 prime ministers. We've done stuff for Disney, for Microsoft. And that guy that made that thing that needs a video, how to explain it, which is fun finding out about what everybody else does for a living. I do have a Batman motorcycle. I have a bat helmet with the ears on the side. And so my wife and I are both avid cyclists and drive all over the place. I got 2 kids, and one is totally into James Bond, and the other one's totally into Green Lantern. I don't know where they get it from, but there could be something to this DNA thing.
So wait, are you, this may be the first time we've delved into this. Do you think there's a collector's gene? I mean, for real, you actually think that?
So the joke that Caroline always makes, I think it's a joke, is, boy, I sure wish that he was into alcohol or crack cocaine, because there's excellent programs for that. There's not so much excellent programs for collecting Batman stuff. So yeah, I think there's something to it. And the fact that I just bought Batman masks for the pandemic and don't know whether I should open them or not, because maybe they're more collectible if I don't open them and use them, even though I might die from COVID, yeah. I don't know. There's something probably that's slightly amiss.
It is a sickness. We all have it. We're going to talk a little bit about where yours comes from. And I think you might be what I would call a prototypical Batman fan in a way. I think you came to it at a certain time when there was a particularly good entrance point for kids. Is that not true?
Yeah, when I was 5 years old is when the Batman TV show was on, which I just absolutely loved. And yes, I'm so old that when my parents got a color TV set and I could watch Batman in color, it was the most amazing thing. At that age too, I was into reading comic books. And so that's when the 12 center Carmen Infantino artwork and Julie Schwartz editorship first came into play. And so those were amazing issues. And I just loved those too. And so, and even about the same time, shortly afterwards, Mego came out with little Batman action figures. And so, yeah, there was lots of stuff to collect. And yeah, I think I hit it at the point where you just went, wow, this is so cool. Batman is so cool.
Isn't it like 5? It's like 5 to 10 is like that prime age. If you can grab somebody, it's like that. What was it that David Wise said? What's the best era of science fiction? And it's like 5 to 10.
Yeah.
It's
an 8-year-old, I think.
8-year-old, yes, an 8-year-old. It's not necessarily a time. That's the best time.
But the thing about Batman, Rob, is in that time period, you said it. There were comics to support that. There was a TV show to support that. And then there were figures. Like there was a market around Batman that was not just nascent, but was really bustling at the time. So you could get it from a number of different sources.
It's funny because Batman comic books dropped in popularity so low that DC was considering canceling them in the early 60s. And then they gave it to Julie Schwartz and said, here, fix it. So in 64, he sort of made him more of a detective again and made him more serious. And by the time of that TV show, what's neat about being a Batman freak is that if I say, yeah, I'm into Batman, pretty much everybody knows who that is, or they have some concept of Batman. And there's so many different versions of them, but they will know that, oh yeah, Batman, I know Batman. And I think that time in the mid-60s, that's when Batman became a truly global phenomenon.
Yeah, I think too that Batman is also a good starter nerd thing because it's, if you were an 89, if you're at the right age at 89 and you saw the Michael Keaton Batman movie, that also was a very approachable Batman. So there has always been a way to get into this without being too nerdy. Like if you're a Green Lantern fan, I'm sorry, you're a nerd probably, right? That's how the society as a whole would look at you. But if you're a Batman fan, I think a lot of people would say, well, yeah, right?
I mean, I was 5 when the 89 movie came out, and that was actually probably my first ever action figure was a Batman. So yeah, it's like you say, it's almost validating that it's, you can grab onto any, just like somebody, the big, well, it's probably the biggest one. One of the biggest ones is you can grab onto your Batman anytime throughout history.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to just back up to when it's hard to know the moment when you stop being a dabbler and start being like a deep collector. I sense, because you have stuff and you showed us, and we're going to cut to some of that if Isaac still has the footage, when you took us around your setup, but you collected stuff early and were aware or seemed to be aware early that you were a collector, right?
One of the things that I have, which I think is the first thing in my collection, so age 5, a Batman A to Z book, and on the back you could cut out this Batman-shaped cardboard mask and put it on. So at age 5, I was driving my tricycle as fast as I could with the darkest bath towel tied around my neck and that mask on. And so yeah, at a pretty early age, because I'm over 5 now, even though I don't act it sometimes, that I still have that. That had meaning for me at age 5. And so all the original comic books that I had to hide under my pillow when Mom came up the stairs and had to turn out the light really fast, and all the toys, the action figures that I played with from a little kid, yep, I still have them all because, hey, they're Batman ones.
How did you get supported by your parents for them not to throw that out, or somehow to, most of us went through a phase where we had stuff that we thought was cool that we weren't allowed to keep under certain circumstances.
I see that Rand hasn't met your parents.
That is true.
They don't throw things out in that family.
They don't throw things out.
Oh, really?
No.
Yes. Nope. And that's, maybe Isaac has picked up on that gene too, because,
we're kind of related.
Going back a couple generations that, I have stuff that my great-grandparents saved for some reason. So,
wow.
Yes. So, there might be a collector gene in there somewhere.
That's interesting. Do you remember the first comic book that you got that was meaningful to you?
There was a 25-cent giant, Batman 197. It's issue number 213. And it had all of the origin stories in it. And so you had the, Here Comes Alfred. You had the origin of Robin for Detective 38. And so it was like, wow. So now I know where all these characters come from. And it's reprints. And so even though it was then a current comic at only a quarter, that it's still, wow, this is historic value because look, here's the original stories from the 1940s. And so I think that was the one that really, that wow, this one I got to keep. And you know what? That cover is so tattered that there's so many rips in it. There's so many folds from reading it in the back of the car and driving back from here, Goderich, to where I live in Kitchener. There is only so many street lights, like the ones in Mitchell are great. So in Mitchell, I could read as the lights went by through the car, a few more pages of Batman stuff, and then it would be dark. So I still have that issue, and yeah, it is totally poor, would not be a good grade for it. It is just awful. But since, of course, I've bought 2 copies of it in much higher grade.
Couldn't you take like your cell phone light and hold it like this?
Cell phone. Oh, cell phone, you Huron County people, you have such weird ways with your texting and your smartphones.
It's interesting. I would call that type of comic a funnel comic. Like that's one that has a wide catchment and it brings people in a number of ways. And I like when those resets come up. I like when there's something that goes, hey, here's a little catch up, come in here. And that really builds collectability in your mind, doesn't it? It gives you a sense of something out there that you need to get.
And I think that, quite recently with the new 52 and then, things like 0 Year or just even the latest reset of Batman issues across the board, that it does feel like, this character's been around for 80 years. It's like, if I want to start reading Batman, what decade do I need to start with? Well, you're right. With these resets, it's sort of like, oh, here's something like this. I think that's why the Elseworld things works as well, because it's now there's no rules. You don't need to know the backstory on it, because in this story, it's, a film noir version of Batman, and therefore everybody knows that, Batman's Bruce Wayne, that his ward's Dick Grayson, that, Commissioner Gordon is the head of police and his friend, his butler's named Alfred. So there's all these sort of presets, but then there are so many new writers and artists and editors that strive to make it still familiar and yet different and accessible. And that's a challenge, certainly.
Let me jump in there, Rand, is that I'm wondering, I always looked at when it came to like, if I was to get into Spider-Man, I don't know if I would know where to start, much like a Batman. You got all these different, does Batman stand out in any ways amongst the big, say, 3 or 4 main characters of comics, in that you really can go, okay, I'm just going to do Frank Miller, or somebody who's entry points that are different? Let
me back up, because Rob and I were talking off camera about this, and I actually stopped this conversation because I wanted to have it now. But this goes back, Rob, to something Isaac and I have come upon a few times when we're making the films and we're talking to people in an IP. And, it's mostly Turtles that it has come up, because we have a Turtles documentary where we're actually addressing this. But basically the line is everybody gets their own Turtles. But the way I flip it in my head is when you have the right IP, the right character, the right milieu, the universe, the story, it's really all about what the different creators do. So it becomes more exciting. What does this artist do? What does this writer do? Would you agree that how they play with those toys becomes kind of the excitement of the title?
Totally. I think, and again, certain combinations have had just such resonance. So in the 70s with Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, that just, for so many people, it's like, this is the way Batman should be. And so, that whole run is one that just people so relate to.
Nick, can you give me an overhead? Like 227 is we're not talking values today, Isaac, so you don't have to look these up, but could you this is a very important title in that, isn't it, Rob?
What's cool about this, there's an entire hardcover book on, your favorite Batman cover. And this cover is one of the ones that is most popular across the board with so many different people of different ages. And it's actually a homage to a real early detective cover with Batman versus the Mad Monk. It's 31, I think, is the cover with this Batman in behind and a big moon. And so here's Neil Adams in the 1970s going, oh man, that Kane had such such an atmosphere to that cover, that issue. And so this is one of those. What makes that a key issue too is that, again, it's the right shopping list of people. I believe the artist is Neil Adams, the writer is Denny O'Neil, the inker is Dan Giordano, and the editor's Julie Schwartz. So it's all, this is the one. This is the right list. So even though you're into Batman, you can still go, man, this is the right Batman. I will read all the ones that match this type.
Nick, Isaac wants to show the homage.
Yeah,
He's going to wet himself if we don't.
Just a minute. Can anybody see me over here?
He's got the homage cover.
I got the homage cover.
We're going to have you back another time to talk about the key issues, Rob. But what I want to, and maybe he can't cut to it right now. What I see this as, this is the time period where they really were making a shift. They were having some success with the horror comics around this time. You think about some of the stuff that was happening. This is just before Swamp Thing, I believe, or in and around that time period. And House of Mystery, House of Secrets, there's a real sense that those are popular. And what I think, if I'm not mistaken, you could correct me about this is really a sea change for the title, isn't it? That was, let's transmute this a little bit and take some of the secret sauce from those horror comics and put that in and make Batman more serious, more interesting, maybe reacting to the TV show. Is that fair?
It's there's that, and the prime time of horror comics is EC in the early 50s. And unfortunately, thanks to Senate hearings and whatever else, it was this total move away from that. So in the late 50s, early 60s, Batman was operating in the daylight, that he had this jeweled badge. He was an official policeman, so none of this vigilante stuff. And, he had a bat dog. It was such a family-friendly thing. And I think so many Batman fans were going, this is not the right Batman. So that cover shows the return of the Batman, the Batman of the night. I think Neil Adams said, okay, if I get a script that says Batman does this in the daytime, well, tough, I'm going to draw it at night, because that's where Batman should be. So with that cover, it's definitely the supernatural edge to Batman. It's the dark Batman. It's the creature of the night. And
he's not presented as the hero. That's what I liked about this cover. I remember seeing this cover, not as the age it came out. I was too young, and we had such limited access here. That was in a previous episode. We were talking about how difficult it was for us to get comics, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. But I remember seeing this and thinking, wait, Batman's the good guy. And my Batman, as a child, was the TV Batman, obviously Adam West. So this was really exciting to see this, and it looks like those horror comics that were coming out from other publishers as well. I think Charlton was putting out some pretty interesting horror, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And even the girl, the character, the dogs, it has a very horror feel. I like that combo, Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams as well. And you have a one here that we should show. Nick, do you want to give me that overhead? How did you get these signed, Rob? Like this is the first Ra's al Ghul, is it not?
Yes. So first appearance of Ra's al Ghul, again, the magic formula. It's written by O'Neil, it's drawn by Adams, it's edited by Schwartz. This is one of the ones. And such an important character that's lasted for so much longer. How did I get those signatures? Well, I'm related to the right people.
Well, I mean,
so
I laugh.
The Neil Adams signature I got at the New York City Comic Con, where happily I was assisting on some Ninja Turtle thing. And the Denny O'Neil one I got while shooting an extended interview with him, with Isaac, in Guelph.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I think working in media and, spending time with broadcast television, I don't get starstruck by too many people. And, certainly, yeah, there's some movie stars where you go, wow, they have it figured out. They're doing all this on all these different fronts. But yeah, meeting Neil Adams or Denny O'Neil, that's when I went, habada, 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 habada. And you just kind of go, it's like, oh, I'm a big fan. And you guys know, you've seen the house, you've seen some of the collection. It's like, I like to think that I'm maybe above the average level of fandom on things.
Yeah.
And yet, meeting those guys, it's like, oh man, you're the ones that made the comic books that I went, this is it.
The exciting thing too, Isaac, you'll speak to this because you had some stuff signed as well by them. It's when you meet people, right? It's when you get the chance to talk to Boris or to Neil or to Denny O'Neil, right? Like that's what really fuses you don't sell these. You don't care about the value anymore, do you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many things that we've done over the years that it makes it very, very personal. It just makes it a personal thing. And I mean, lots of people get the chance or lucky enough or have the privilege to go to a con and meet these people, say across a table, maybe in certain cases you have to pay for a signature or something like that. I know that it sounds a little braggy, but we're very lucky and blessed in this specific area of work that we do because we can kind of take it a step further because we're interacting with some of these people that we might be huge fans of and actually kind of get to know them or talk to them, off camera, so to speak, because we literally are taking that beyond just being a fan at a desk. We're actually sitting down and talking to them about their lives, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and you find out that they're people, obviously, but you also get some depth that infuses the title, right? Like when you pick this one up, it's not just the first Ra's al Ghul anymore. This is the one that you got signed yourself. That's very meaningful. And that makes going to a con, I think, that much more exciting. Some of these guys, Steranko, for example, how long is Jim Steranko going to be around? Neil Adams is relatively young and healthy for a guy who's had as many years in the business as him. But Isaac and I were at an event where Basil Gogos was sitting there by himself, a great horror artist. He was all alone and he looked like he was 157. And you think, like this is incredible to be able to see these people and get them signed. And I mean, it may feel like a little bit of a side discussion when we want to talk to you about Batman, but it does really make it more personal. And your stories about Batman are personal, aren't they? This is something that's part of your life.
It's fun too. At the New York Comic Con, I was sitting next to Michael Uslan, a producer of all the Batman movies from '89 on, and got to shake the hand of Jerry Robinson. So here's the guy who co-created Robin the Boy Wonder, the sidekick. And depending on who you listen to, is the creator, artist, writer of the Joker. Mm-hmm. So what do you say to this guy who's 95, 96 years old? So I shook his hand and just said, thank you so much for your work. Because, I am a collector. If I knew you guys better, I would say, am I wearing Batman underwear right now?
We know you are, Rob.
Yeah, you know who I am. And so you don't want to scare them. You don't want to say, I'm your biggest fan. Am I their biggest fan? No. At another one of the cons, I had a guy come up to me to go, if you're such a big Batman fan, why don't you have a Batman tattoo on your face like I do? And, and I'm thinking in my brain, because I still have to buy groceries and work for people. And therefore, so it's sometimes when you meet these people, you know that Neil Adams has had just an army of people going your Batman is the Batman. And, it's true. But at the same time, it's an interesting experience to meet the guys that created this thing that you were reading at age 8 and hiding under the pillow.
Do you think, Rob, that it is tied to the age that you grabbed something? So your Batman is the Batman that you had at the age that you were the most impressionable. And I guess, Isaac, you chip in on this too, because you kind of went through this with some of the things you were fans of over the years.
Well, and I can even speak to Batman itself because, of course, like I said earlier, being 5 or so when it came out. Actually, it was funny. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. We had taped it off the television, so I've only seen the first 10 minutes of Batman maybe twice, but I've seen everything after the first 10 minutes 100 times because we missed it by that much. So I'm like, wait, this happens in the opening scene? But yeah, I mean,
I can lend you a copy if you.
I'm sure you have a couple. I mean, yeah, it really, it's hard to detach from that no matter how many times. And I mean, in fandom, people get upset when, anything is changed. And of course, you have to keep changing, iterating, otherwise you're just treading water. But the point is that you can't take away the thing, the 89 Batman. I can always go watch that one, and that can be mine, and that's fine. And I can enjoy the other ones after that. But yes, for me, when I'm most impressionable at 5, Michael Keaton's my Batman in 89. So, but I'm sure for Rob, I mean, that's a cool one, but probably he's got another one that's his favorite.
Rob?
Yeah, you know what I find interesting is the 1992 Batman the Animated Series. For so many Batman fans, that was the one. Like when you have lists of who's the best Batman, that quite often Kevin Conroy, who only does the voice of Batman, is at the top of the list. And the reasons why, it's like, well, Keaton, reflected both sides pretty well and all this other stuff. And then when they get to why is Kevin Conroy so good, they go, because he is Batman. And so, even though this was a show arguably aimed at kids in the afternoon, I was recording every episode of that at 4:00, even though I had to work a day job.
So that
I could watch that show. So for me, the 92 series is an amazing version of Batman.
And the Mask of the Phantasm.
I still cry when at the end of Mask of the Phantasm, because that he's got to go on, because that's the mission and the obsession and the music. It just hits it bang on. At one of the cons, I did stand in line for like 3 miles to see Mark Hamill, who I guess is an actor and he's done some other stuff, but it was for the Killing Joke animated thing. And so here's Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy. And when Kevin Conroy's in this room of over 10,000 people going, he does the line with the, I am the Knight, I am the Batman. And it's like I'm going, wow, it's like some kid's voice thing, and I have goosebumps, because that line from that guy is like, yeah, that is the right Batman. Even though I have, just since I've been alive and with all the stuff I've collected back to the 1940s, there are so many different Batman. I really like the Frank Miller take, but man, that animated series just seems to nail it.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I could probably look it up right here, but a lot of fan community forums or what have you, a lot of people would say that Mask of the Phantasm is probably the highest ranked favorite Batman film. I'm pretty sure, of all of them. I'm pretty sure.
I don't respond to 89 Batman, and I didn't respond to the animated Batman, and I didn't respond to the Batman that everybody loved in the 2000s, Nolan's Batman. My Batman, if I'm going to go back and pick the ones that hit me the most, it's probably the comic book Batman. And I like the Miller Batman. And I like Snyder Batman. I thought was really complicated and interesting. And Capullo's art to me, it was revelatory. But it never, I'm still waiting for my Batman. And I have really high hopes for Matt Reeves' approach. But I think one of my favorite Batman incarnations is, did you read, of course you did, what Jeff did in I've lost it, Jeff Johns. What's the one that he did where he went back and retold the story again? Earth 2, not Earth 2.
Oh, yes, the hardcover Earth 2 with
Is it called Earth 2?
Yep, it's Earth 2 and I think that's all it is Batman Earth 2.
No, I've mixed it up.
Definitely Alfred is much more of an empowered character.
And I like that Alfred very much. I like that. And so that's kind of what we're getting at here is there's something to like about everything, and there's something, that maybe fits your need or something that doesn't fit your need. It's open. It's a blank canvas in a way for people to come in. There are parts that have to be hit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff I love about the Nolan Batman, but then there's some feelings that just weren't hit there for me.
I think the other thing too that's interesting about Batman, now that I think about it, as we're talking about these iterations that are separate from each other that you can enjoy, is unlike some other superheroes, but like some of the other successful properties we've talked about in the past, Batman seems to have a license where you can go in and visually redesign him as well. From a costume and look perspective, like Frank Miller's Batman is dramatically different from live action, from Adam West, from all of these. So there's also this inroad from and that's a very important thing, obviously, in a visual medium that we're talking about, is that those inroads you can actually identify just even based on the costume or the feel or the aesthetic, which is actually pretty rad. I think he stands out as a character more than Superman and Spider-Man for me in terms of being able to be different in different iterations. He can't change Superman that much, I don't think.
I might fight you on the Superman. We can talk about that another time. I think any creative writer, like we were talking again, Rob, off air, Grant Morrison did some pretty crazy stuff with.
Oh, I'm talking visuals only, Rand. I'm only talking about just his costume. I'm saying, gotcha. You take off his red tights. Okay. All right, now he's still blue. I mean, Batman can be gray and white. He can be blue and white. He can be all black. He can have
treads on his boots.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking. Visuals only. Yes, I know that you can do lots of things with characters across the board, but I'm saying from a costume and a visual standpoint, Batman is pretty rich. You can do an awful lot with him.
I think there are certain characteristics of certain characters that are just so well designed. The story is so iconic that it lends itself to this. And again, with all this different media we have floating around us, it's pretty amazing to see that here's a character that's lasted for 80 years. Mm-hmm. So what ingredients of this character is there that you could be attracted to? Like, I'm still getting the latest comic books and reading Batman stories. And yeah, they're different. Right now there's this Batman Catwoman love thing happening, and then getting crushed, and then happening, and I'm still interested in it. And because somehow they've still made it interesting. I think if you had the same artist or the same, it's like Charles Schultz on Peanuts. It's like nobody else will draw Peanuts. Peanuts will look this way because that's the way they do. I think if you had that with Batman and the same artists and the same, here is the stories, there's no dicking with the past or that I don't know if it could last 80 years. And yet there's something about characters like Batman, like Robin Hood, to a lesser degree, Spider-Man and certainly Superman that somehow has lasted this long. It's the variety, I think, that has kept it alive. And yet at the same time, we were talking earlier about Frank Miller, that the artwork was so different. It is so grittier. It is so nastier. And yet, for me anyway, when I read it, I just went, wow, Frank Miller knows who Batman is, that he so gets it. That even with the, subtle little different things, like even the, watch your language, son, when that kid, tells, hey, Batman, hopefully you're going to kick his, it's like, that's what Batman would say, even though the art is so different, even though it's a different time, even though that's all these other social things going on in that world. And yet it's still Batman. It's still, there's something in there that's definitely still Batman.
And what is it? What is it that, can you distill what is it in that franchise or that character that has worked for you so well? That would be, if we were making the documentary right now, that'd be the question I'd have to ask you. I'd have to know, some people would say with Turtles, it's family, there's, they have a duty to each other, there's the mutation. There are these core elements that you cannot mess with. But there's got to be something about your Batman that you go, these are the parts, these are the things that transfer no matter who's writing, who's drawing, whatever. I think,
and there's the cliche answer to this, even though it's still valid, is that here's the superhero that's not superpowered, that this is just a guy. If you had, and I know people have actually calculated the number of billions of dollars that you would need to actually be Batman, to buy all this, to build a cave, to do a train station that looks like this, that how much money would be required. And but there's still the idea that you could be Batman if you really worked hard at it, if you practiced like this guy did, that you could be Batman. You can't be Spider-Man unless you get bitten by a radioactive spider, or you can't be Superman because you weren't born on Krypton. But so I think that there's that accessibility, that he's human, even though, he's a real smart guy. But at the same time, that there's still that, he's human. He's more relatable. He's more connected.
Is there anything and this might be a little in the weeds, but is there anything to the fact that the character is unstable, that there is sort of a fascination with somebody who's maybe on the edge of, I think people in general like that, where they can kind of dig into what's strange about this guy, because he has to be a pretty, either he has trauma in his life, obviously in Batman's case, so that it's interesting that he's dealing with essentially a mental illness or potentially trauma scenario, PTSD. Is that maybe something that makes that character over time?
That's very post 80s Batman, I think.
Do you think so?
I do.
But it's always been part of his story, is it not? Because he has to be a human that dresses up like a bat. It's always there, is it not?
It's certainly played up so much in the later ones, the obsession and whatever else. So, why did Caroline pick me out of all of her boyfriends? She says, because I was the most persistent. That, somehow I'm still a corporate video producer after 30 years. And some of the people in this room know what that means. And so there's a certain, I guess, I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to be obsessive about it. The Batman collection, do I have every Batman thing? Oh, thank God I don't, because I don't have that kind of money or that kind of space. But I do like getting one of these things because it's so cool, because it's still Batman, but it's this variation. And so I think that the same persistence and obsession that I have towards Batman and collecting the more stuff, what would be cool is if I rode a Batman motorcycle with a Batman helmet, a Batman jacket, Batman gloves. So finding those things and then acting on them, I don't know. Maybe that's some of the connection I have to Batman, because the Bruce Wayne character is obviously very persistent. He's very hardworking. He has his eyes on the prize. And so, that's one of the characteristics of Batman that I like. That's why at the end of Mask of the Phantasm that I cry, because the mission is still there, that he has to do it, that's who he is.
And the thing is, I pour the things that are meaningful to me into my Batman. My Batman is the guy who is driven by demons that push him beyond the limits of his own body, right? He cannot stop because there's no meaning outside of the drive. That's the realization of my Batman. Like, torn apart Frank Miller Batman, he's beaten, he's, that shot where he's sitting in the chair and he just looks like he's hamburger, and he's going out again, and night after night, and he's got to do what he's got to do. And it's not a death wish in his case. I know a lot of people think it is. It's that drive is what it is. He's realized this is what life is. This drive, running into the fire, running into the bricks, like that scene in the movie where Affleck's going the other way. To me, that is pure Batman. I thought, yep, everybody else is going this way, he's going that way. And to me, that's powerful, right? If you are a person who struggles and you have things that you have to deal with, that's a really good character. So we infuse, you put your persistence in, I put my sense of moving forward in any direction that I have to go without stopping. Somebody else is saying he's brilliant, he's planning. We all can find these pieces that we attach to. What would you say, Isaac?
I was going to jump on the fact that sounds very Conan. And I was like, I love it, because there's a similar trope there. I mean, you could even dive in. You actually just touched on it a little bit, Rand. It's not just his genius, but it's also there's probably a good word for it, Rand, and you're going to say it. It's not just it's the minutia, or getting into the technical. Oh, he has these cool toys and he has gadgets, and there's something really fun about those elements that you can dive, and maybe that is sort of me as a gearhead. You can get into the cars, the things on his tool belt, the accessories. As a kid, pouring a little bit of my interest from the toys, like growing up playing with the toys that were based on the '89 film. But I loved this idea. Before I saw the film, I can remember this specifically going, well, there's all these Batmans out, and of course that I can't remember, was it Kenner? Was Kenner doing it at the time? I can't remember the toy company that was doing it.
Even Showbiz before Kenner.
Okay, so those action figures, they would be like the Goldie bronze one, and there'd be like a silver one and a black one and a yellow and black one. And as a kid, I'm like, oh, this suit he's got is bulletproof, and this suit can fly, and this suit can go underwater. So he was like, oh, I can pour in this, like he's got this technical stuff that he's building. And so to me, that was a big thing.
There, we just had 3 different Batman.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I want to get granular for a minute. This one that's in front of me, you're number 2.
Oh, I was going to suggest that we bring
Could you tell us the story? And then this is not just something anybody can get, is it?
I think you know what? I don't even know how many things I have in my Batman collection. I'm trying to catalog all of the issues. I'm up to 3,300 different Batman comic books right now. Out of all of them, that's the rare one. That is a Batman number 2 from 1940. What makes it apparently unique, according to the Overstreet Guide, is that price tag says 15 cents.
Yeah.
This one was printed specifically for distribution in Canada in 1940. By the third one, they figured out that they could just have a price tag that said 10 cents or 15 cents in Canada. But this one, they list as being a copy is known to exist. So what else makes it cool about that comic book? It's the second appearance of some villain called the Joker. It's the first time they call the jewel thief the Catwoman. It's probably the fourth or fifth appearance of Robin the Boy Wonder. It's also famous for a story in there where Batman uses a machine gun. As much as I hate to take human life, this time it's necessary. Which prompted the editor at the time to say, okay, nope, from going forward that Batman does not kill. This is going to be a new part of the mythos, that Batman never kills. And so there was so much going on in that comic book. I bought it at an auction, and the characters at the auction made me look normal. There was a guy wearing a best description, Klingon leisure suit. It was sort of this leather studded thing. He had boots that went up to his waist and a Trotsky beard and little John Lennon glasses, and he would keep playing with the beard and going, I don't know, I'm not sure if I should up the bid. And so it's a silent auction. We're all standing there. Next to him is this impeccably dressed Ralph Lauren clothes and very expensive leather Italian shoes, young Oriental kid who is Asian kid who is looking to buy the thing because he's selling them at a trade show and thinks that this will be a good draw. And I'm looking at it because this is as close as I can get to the start of Batman. Yeah. And at the end of it, I win the auction and I go home and I'm just white because I should be spending the money on baby food and mortgage payments. And instead I have this thing. And my wife, who suggested my starting bid, so in that moment, not that there's a million other times that I knew I married the right woman, that even at this auction, that when I said to the guy holding the auction, Caroline thinks my starting bid should be this, that everybody in the store who are still living in their parents' basement just went like, now he's flaunting it. He's been with a woman, and now he's just, and the woman puts up with this. So I showed her the thing and I thought, what a stupid thing I've done. This time I've crossed the line. I've collected too much. And she gave me such a wonderful hug and said, if anybody deserves to have a Batman #2, it's you. And so, is there great value on that comic book? Sure. But, the monetary value is nothing compared to all the other connections for me personally that go into that book. So that is certainly one of the most valuable things in my collection, and it's not just because that's what it's guided at. And
they changed the Overstreet Guide for that book, right?
Yes. So at the time that I made them aware of that book, and even then, I called DC Comics in New York trying to figure out why the 15-cent cover price. And the guy, who I think is that character from The Simpsons that's still in puberty, goes, oh, gee, I don't know about that. And so he goes, I'll put you through to someone else. And then there's this voicemail that says, hi, it's Denny. Leave a message. Beep. I'm going, it's Denny O'Neil. I'm on the answering machine of Denny O'Neil. And it's like, so I'm going, it's like, I can't believe I'm on the message machine of Denny O'Neil. And I'm like, shit, I'm sounding like a geek now. And it's like, so I got this bit, I just bought this real expensive 15-cent cover price. Sorry, bye, click. So then I get a call back from the overall assistant editor of Batman Comics at the time, because at this time Denny was the head of overall editor for all Batman titles. So Jordan Gorfinkel calls back and goes, I'm calling because of a rather cryptic message left on Denny O'Neil's answering machine. And
yes.
So then I talked to one of the head researchers at the Overstreet Guide that says, wow, can you send us a photocopy of it? Because we might want to use it in the book. It's like, and so then I have to get a photocopy. Well, I take it to Kinko's and they go, sure, leave it and we'll get it back to you. And it's like, no. It's like the thing is in this briefcase that is handcuffed to my wrist because you would have to cut off my hand to, and so I open the case and it's like some kind of light from Pulp Fiction that shows up and he goes, is that for real? And I go, yeah. And he goes, we do not want that in the store at all because our insurance does not cover that. So Carol Ann found a place that does very high-res copies of large blueprints. This was so long ago you used paper for blueprints.
Wow.
And so they did a photocopy of it. And so I have that photocopy, and it's been sent to the Overstreet Guide, and that's when they changed the book to say a 15-cent cover is known to exist.
That is so crazy.
I love that.
I'm gonna suggest to you that you can't sell it. It doesn't matter what they pay.
The good news is, the line that when we hired somebody to try to do the thousands of media things, tapes, discs, whatever else in our place, her criteria for organizing it was, what if Rob gets hit by a bus? And so I ran with that. And so now I believe that, yes, my death will probably be at the hands of a bus. And so, will that get sold? Yes. So when you see a large Batman collection showing up on eBay or everywhere else, including a number 2, you know that I'm dead under the wheels of a bus. The horrible thing is where I live, just recently, they've put in a bus line. It's bus 33, which again is a good issue of Batman. But so bus 33, when I'm dead, that's when it's going to get sold.
You did say to me earlier tonight that you would put me at the bottom of that list.
I will add your name to the list because I believe Carol Ann, who is the most loving, understanding, enabling person that I know, will probably want to move stuff real fast. And she'll know that Randall's got the bread because, hey, he's faux pop.
Did you know that your comic is on Covrprice?
Is it? I haven't pulled it up. I should pull it up right now.
It's here as the one variant on Covrprice.
That's
Is
awesome.
it really?
I'm pulling that up right now. Yeah, here we go, everybody.
Isn't that funny?
And you're going to look it up? And you're going to tell me? You're going to tell me how much? So
the internet's not going very fast right now.
No, it's just interesting.
You know what's interesting is a friend of mine who works for the government, has no significant female in his life, and therefore has a huge personal disposable income, buys comic books, like he'll buy entire collections or entire walls from a dealer and all this other stuff. He one time asked, this was like a totally near mint copy, second appearance, Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and he said, is this worth $2,000? It was just an amazing shape. The guy who runs the comic book store said, okay, that is the wrong question. Because is it going to be worth $2,000 a year from now or 10 years from now or 20 years from now? He did finally sell it for, I forget how much more than 2,000, but the question, according to comic book store owner guy, the wonderful Andy, is it worth $2,000 to you?
Yeah.
What's the value of it to you? And so some of the stuff that I have in my collection is like, is it worth 2 cents? No, but hey, it's this candy bag that has Batman on it and it's in German. And it should have been thrown in the garbage in the 1970s and it should be compost by now. But I have it, and I think it's the greatest thing. I have a set of Batman dress shirt button covers that are probably worth $1. But for me, I love it because somebody had to manufacture this stuff, and I have one of the things. So, is it worth $1,000 to me? Well, unfortunately for this one, yeah, because I have so many silly strings attached to it. But for some of the other stuff in the collection, when I do look at an issue that I don't have, and it's like, okay, it's in a good shape, it's $400. No, I'm going to pass on that one.
Well, this was the kind of the final. Are you going to look it up?
Yeah, well, I've got it here. But the thing that's interesting about it is that, of course, there's 54 total recorded sales of the normal 10-cent variant, or the only one, basically the normal one. The top recorded sale at a 9.2 near mint was $43,000. But that's the normal one. The cool thing is that your photocopy is here because it's nicely showing up here in a nice color shot.
Wow.
There it is. There's your photocopy because that would obviously be the
only one.
So, but there's no sales data because it's never been sold. So there's nothing to actually grade or say anything about it other than it exists.
Cue the music. Another one rides the bus.
There's one more thing. We have just a couple more questions and then we'll let you go. I just wanted to ask, is there something in your collection that I've had this before where I would buy something and I would have it, and someone would say, "What's it worth?" And I would say, "I'm not selling it." Right? Like Hulk 181 or whatever, first Wolverine. Is there something in your collection that you have sold or that you have thought about selling? Like you maybe have doubles or whatever. Have you gone down that road and tried to prune
He's
or
asking
had
for
to
a
prune?
friend.
I am not asking for myself. I'm just wondering if you've been through that situation that many collectors get to where.
Now, here's the funny thing. I think that if you're a second cousin once removed, that you're far enough away from my direct bloodline that you could sell a really cool Ninja Turtle stuff if you really needed the money to feed your kids. But for Batman stuff, have I sold anything? Like anything?
You haven't, have you?
No.
No. So you keep doubles,
one-
you keep everything.
This one time he had some old tungsten film lights that he was throwing out. That one time, I have them.
It's listen. We've all
They're
been
a
through
fire
this.
hazard.
They
I
were a
certainly
fire-
wouldn't put them in a very nice, refined. Oh, wait a minute.
We've all collectors have dealt with this, Rob. But it's you. Obviously, you're keeping it. So when you buy stuff, it does not matter what the resale value is. You're keeping it.
It's funny because that is a line from Carol Ann. Because sometimes when people see stuff, like for example, I have the first Batman lunchbox. It's the Aladdin 66. It's with the thermos. Mm-hmm. And a couple people who actually know that one go, "Oh my God, that's the holy grail of Batman lunchboxes." And, do you know how much that's worth? And then if Carol Ann's in the room, she goes, "Hey, Rob, you going to sell that?" "Are you kidding me? My sister gave me this." Then she goes, "Yeah, it's worth nothing because you're not selling it.
He won't
If you're
sell
not
it.
selling it, it's not worth anything." And, is that a valid point?
Yeah.
I guess it is. I will say that over the years that there have been people that I've been very close to, including family people and stuff like this, that if something does come up, and of course, if I have 2 copies of it or something like that, that yes, I actually have said,
Oh,
okay. But because again, I think in some cases you just know the joy that it's going to go. Just moments ago, I gave away this totally cool baby-sized Joker sleeper because of course that's what you would buy for the
An evil baby.
family baby. Yes, and so for an evil baby or any other baby, because doesn't any kid look better in Batman stuff?
but you don't. I'm just kind of trying to get to this one thing. It's not a business for you. This is a labor of love. You're not buying stuff and maybe not constantly upgrading and then selling out and replacing and selling out or doubling and selling out. You're buying for your own pleasure, true passion.
I do know so many people that do that. And again, investment return on comic books certainly beats any kind of mutual funds that you've had in the last 6 months.
It can.
However, you're right. It's in my case, it's like, oh my God, I have this one now.
Yeah.
And it's not as if I'm so, obsessive. I read that number 2. I couldn't sleep that night. So I got up and I used like a flamethrower on my hands so that there would be no fingerprints or grease, and then put on my hazmat suit. And then I read the comic book, and which some people, when I tell them that, it's like,
Yeah.
are you nuts? This should be in a safety deposit box, which it has been. It's here now, though. And so, but, why would you do that? Well, because I really like Batman. I really like the stories. I really like reading it. It's cool to think that somehow this thing, which should have been thrown out in the fall of 1940, lasted, 80 years to now, and here it is.
Yeah.
So I think there's some of the stuff is even though its historic value is nil, when the aliens find our destroyed planet after World War III, that, they'll find these little plastic figures and go, what were they thinking? But at the same time, when I get an unopened 89 pre-Kenner, Batman thing, I'm thinking, wow, this was from a time when there was another Batmania covering the planet, because that 89 thing, again, now there's Batman cereal again. Now there's this, now there's that. Some of the stuff I have from the 60s, I love almost as a historic artifact. Who would buy Batman bread? Well, I would. And I have a mint wrapper from a loaf of Batman bread from the 60s. Part of me just thinks what a historical curiosity this is, that somebody did a print run, a manufacturing thing. They thought it would sell. They thought it would make sense to license it. And some of the stuff I have, I don't know if another human being has it or not, but I still think, wow, this thing that they came up with was, aimed at kids in 1995.
You're the example of provenance. You're discussing this idea that the ideas that we put into these collectibles, we infuse them with meaning. That's the definition of collectible. You get to decide what's collectible. And I'm going to break the social isolation for a minute to give you something that you don't have.
He's not going to open it.
This is made by a woman in our community. Kim Hart, Sweetheart Baking. Is that the right name? We'll make sure we put that up.
You know, the truth is, those cookies taste really good.
Oh,
he can't eat it.
He can't eat
That's
it.
too bad because I can't eat it.
Because we should get him another generic one.
That cookie is made by a local artist. She's very talented. She does beautiful work. We'll put up a link to where you can see her work. She made that for us because she knows we're into this stuff, and you need to have it.
This is amazing, and sadly, I won't eat it because it's just too cool.
Well,
I would get sick and throw up and then try to save the barf. But
if it makes you feel better, I never eat any of the other good stuff that she gives us. We love it. It just looks too good to eat.
She made us enough of the dark crystal ones. I think you might have tried one.
You know what? I think 20 or 25 years ago, somebody made me a set of Batman chocolates. They found a Batman chocolate mold, so they gave me these Batman chocolates, which was amazing. I still have them. And somehow they haven't gone all moldy. There was something about I don't know, maybe there's no actual chocolate or milk in it. Yeah, they're just wax. Maybe it was poison. Maybe she thought it's time to get rid of Rob. But she made me a second set and she said, okay, this is stupid. Please eat the chocolates so she gave me a second identical set of chocolates so that I could eat them. And I did eat that set.
I will say, the reason why you didn't eat them is because you have accurately identified that Batman is a deity and you cannot destroy the figures of a deity. That's
by
blasphemy.
consumption.
You know what? I'm active in the church that I go to, probably because they have a fantastic HD streaming live video setup. Oh, and God. But They've actually interviewed me about things for the church as well, and it's like, what are you going to say? It's like, oh no, I'm a Christian, but I really follow this guy with horns that sits in the dark, and is in with all the evil, and so it's not lost on me that maybe Teletubbies would be a more wholesome thing to follow, but no.
There's far fewer Teletubby merchandise.
I love it.
Collect.
Andy, the owner of Carry On Comics in Waterloo, who is just the most amazing fellow, and such a huge Neil Adams fan. And what was cool is I got Neil Adams to sign a thing that says to Andy, which he totally loves. He went to art school because of seeing Neil Adams and going, wow, I can be like that. So that was very cool. But Andy told me, he goes, could be worse. You could be into Star Wars. And so, and I think one thing that I like about collecting Batman is that I will never get it all because they're making new stuff every hour, including this cookie, this amazing cookie. And therefore I know that there's no way I'm going to get it all. Like I'm not a completist that's going to go, oh, Detective 1000, 26 covers. Yeah, I'm going to get all 26.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm going to get 2. Which is probably one more than I should have got, but still, that's the kind of cool thing about Batman is that I can collect some tiny little bit of it, knowing that it's not all. Isaac did get me this totally cool He-Man Masters of the Universe. So I can't say that because it wasn't licensed version of Batman. That's this definitely He-Man version of Batman, even though it doesn't say He-Man on it. And I love that too because it's so weird, and yet. Somebody made it, and I got one now. And it comes with a story because Isaac found it in a Target store in California when you guys were shooting something else and called me and said, the blue and gray one or the black and gray one? I go, oh, it has to be the blue and gray one. And so,
Savage Batman, wasn't it?
Yes. Something like that, yeah.
And I've seen the We did have a big black dog, and yes, I have dog Batman costumes. I've only forced the dog into it once.
You have a second Christmas tree for the Batman ornament.
I do. I have a strictly Batman thing. Because again, instead of Birth of Our Lord, how about that guy that lives in the dark with the pointy? Anyway,
there's a part in every interview where you stop talking about good things and you start talking about intervention time.
You just said at the beginning that we don't have good interventions for
that's
this
the problem.
issue.
And we don't know how to fix you.
So just in case somebody who is watching this is wondering, I do have a relatively normal life. And I do work for people that have no idea that I'm into Batman. It is fun when we do a shoot at the house because if they actually stumble into the room, then they stop making eye contact with me. But before that, it really is. And I think that's the difference. I know that there are some people where Batman is so much more of their life than it is of mine that I don't think it is a healthy thing. That at some point it really, if your kids are going hungry because you so needed that Killing Joke statue, then there's something wrong. So I've been very blessed in that I can collect Batman stuff and can have a secret identity where I have a normal non-Batman life.
Can we end this episode by cutting to some footage of in your space? You allowed us in your space. Can we show some of that now?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, so we'll create a tail out. Thanks so much, Rob Currie. You have been a most Batman inspiring collector. You made me want to get some of the things you have here that have always been on my list. I thank you for coming down to the station in person and bringing your treasures with you. Isaac, is there anything you would say to your second cousin twice removed?
Once removed.
Sorry.
Wait, once removed?
Yeah.
I can't remember that.
That's what he would say.
No, it's awesome. It's just awesome to have.
That's the final words of loving family.
No,
I can't remember that.
I've heard these stories thousands of times, and I can't get enough of them every time. I love it. It's just, it's family. Love them. It's good to have them here.
You know what?
I
so love that you guys are doing this. What a pleasure to be on here, and thanks for all you do for promoting, to making it seem normal maybe to be this kind of collector.